So again, we are looking, what is the third objective in this lesson? On page 25. Isaac, what is it?
Solving equations that contain fractions.
Solving equations that contain fractions. Okay, because what we're not going to do is we're not going to use the fraction key on our calculators to do this. So we're going to learn what do we do to undo an equation that has fractions in it, because we do the undoing, we do the inverse operations to solve. So what are we going to do? Instead of using our fraction key on our calculator, how can we make this easier for ourselves? And not that putting it into a decimal is not always necessarily as friendly as we would like it to be. So we're not even going to put it into a decimal. Negroes, you're going to tell me how we're going to do it? Okay. Let's make sure everybody gets what they need here, and then we'll talk about that. Okay, everybody got a copy? Okay. Now, if I said we're not going to use a fraction key on our calculator, and we're going to have fractions that we're going to have to deal with in the problem, if a variable is being multiplied by a fraction, as it says at the beginning of our notes here, if a variable is being multiplied by a fraction, what can we can undo that multiplication with another multiplication, and what would that be, Rose? What did you say we could do? What were you trying to say we could do? Oh, we can multiply both sides by the reciprocal of that fraction. We can multiply both sides by the reciprocal of that fraction. And by the way, even if it's, every number has a reciprocal. Every number has a reciprocal, not just the fractions. They all do. Okay, so, can somebody tell me what is the reciprocal of 1/2? Brighton?
2 over 1.
2 over 1. We have the numerator and the denominator trade places. So what's the reciprocal of 3/2? Class?
1/2.
3/2. 3 over 2. What's the reciprocal of 3 over 2? 2 over 3. So 2/3. Oh, this is painful. What's the reciprocal of 7?
7 over 1.
7 over 1 is 7.
Oh, 1 over 7.
The reciprocal is 1/7. What's the reciprocal of a negative 3/4?
Negative 4/3.
Negative 4/3. So if the number is negative, the reciprocal is negative. If the number is positive, the reciprocal is positive. The numerator and the denominator trade places. Okay, so let's just start practicing here, solving some of these types of problems. What's happening on the side where x is? X is being what?
Divided by.
Divided by.
No, it's not. It's being
Multiplied by 3/8.
It's being multiplied by 3/8. And that's a fraction. So instead of doing what we would have done yesterday, when the variable was being multiplied by something yesterday, to undo that, we divided by that. Today, when the variable is being multiplied by a fraction, we're going to not divide. We're not going to use our calculators. We're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the number that x is being multiplied by. What's the reciprocal of 3/8 then?
8/3.
8/3. Okay, Destiny and Dakota, I'm about ready to separate you. Okay, so we're going to take both sides of the equation times 8/3. So what I did is I introduced, this is what got introduced into the problem. Into the problem was the 8/3. So we're multiplying both sides by that 8/3. Now, this 6 can be made into a fraction by putting it over 1. Okay, on the side where the variable is, what's true when you have an 8 upstairs and an 8 downstairs?
Can't you like cross them off and change it to a 1?
Yeah, they can cancel out and become 1s. Because they're both divisible by 8. And these 3's can
Yeah, you can do simple.
cross out and become 1s. Well, when you just have a bunch of 1s with multiplying and dividing, what happens?
It's a 1.
It's just 1, isn't it? So in reality, what's going on here is we're gonna end up with a 1x, so we're just gonna call that x.
Okay.
1x is x, isn't it? What do you think? Is 1x x?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Over here, we have two options. We have two options. We can multiply the numerators
No.
across first, and then the denominators, and then we can simplify after,
No,
or we can do some simplifying before.
Before.
So how could we simplify this? Isaac, what's your move gonna be?
You can make the 3 a 1 and the 6 a 2.
In other words, 6 is divisible by that 3, so 3 into itself is 1. 3 into 6 is 2. Okay, when we can simplify up and down, we do it. Dakota, I really need you to sit up, or I'm going to have to move you up here and make a spot for you. Okay? Malcolm, you have a question?
Is this cross multiplication?
It's more like cross simplification. It's kind of like we're doing dividing. Cross multiplying is when we solve proportions, and that'll come later on this year. But you are remembering something from another type of problem.
So we can do 8 times 6 and 3 times 1 if we wanted to.
If you wanted to.
Yeah.
it was just-
Because 8 times 6 is what?
42, 46,
40.
48.
48. And 3 times 1 is
3.
3. So what we would end up with is 48 over 3, and then we would divide that out. And that is 48 divided by 3 is, anybody happen to know? 16, okay? So now, but what we want to try and do is not use the calculator. So what we're going to, if we simplify first, then we maybe don't have to use the calculators. Can we simplify going across like this? Can we take, since 8 is divisible by 2 and 2 is divisible by 2, can we do that?
No.
No, because they're both
On the top.
on the top. One has to be up and one has to be down. You can't divide just out of the top in a fraction problem. So since we have just ones downstairs, we're going to say 8 times 2 upstairs is 16. 1 times 1 is 1. So x is really what?
16.
16. So we get the same answer as if we do what JC said. Can we multiply first and then simplify? But again, do I want you to try not to use your calculator as much as possible? So that's why we're going to try to do the simplifying first. Okay? Any other questions about that problem before we do move on? Maybe we should kind of, I'm going to make a little dividing line there between these two problems. Okay, the next one. Again, we look at it, we see there's our variable. We want y alone. Y is being multiplied by
Negative 2.
negative 2/3. So what are we going to do? Remember, if it's being multiplied by a fraction, we're going to,
Divide.
no, we're not going to divide today because it's a fraction. We're going to multiply by its reciprocal. So what's the reciprocal of negative 2/3?
Negative 3.
Negative 3/2. So we're going to take both sides times negative 3/2. What can we do with that 4 again? Put it over 1. Okay, now the goal should always be, here's what should always happen on the side of the variable, or you've picked the wrong thing to multiply by. You should be able to cancel away on that side. You can say, I got negative signs that can cancel, I got 3's that can cancel, and I got 2's that can cancel. That's what should happen. Because if it does, then you have the variable by itself, which was the goal. And then let's do some simplifying before we do some multiplying. Okay, let's see. What goes into one of those numerators that also goes into one of those denominators? Dakota?
2 goes to 4 2 times.
Okay. And it goes into itself
Once.
okay. Is there anything else we can do to simplify before we multiply now?
No.
Yes.
Got 1's downstairs. Is there anything that's going to be useful to divide into 1 that is going to change anything? No. So now this is where, again, remember no calculator. A negative times a positive
That's not a negative.
is a negative. 3 times 2?
6.
6. 1 times 1?
1.
1. So our answer is
-6.
-6 is our y value. So, in reality, when we're multiplying by that reciprocal, because it was a fraction problem, in reality what's happening is dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So we're just going straight to multiplying by the reciprocal and not even dealing with the division part. Do you have a question for us, Destiny?
You most likely. Am I going to get the notes from yesterday? Because I'm like really confused.
Yep, you are. Okay. So 5n over 2 equals -5. 5n over 2 equals -5. We're going to do something with this problem before we start it. When the variable is upstairs in the fraction, hear me on this because it's the only time you can do this. When the variable is upstairs in a fraction, it can be pulled out. So we're going to rename this equation 5/2 n equals -5. We're going to rename this equation 5/2 n equals -5 because the n is upstairs in a fraction. So we can do that. Now we're going to solve that. We get n being multiplied by 5/2. So what do we have to do to undo that?
Reciprocal.
Okay, the reciprocal is?
2 over 5, 2/5.
So we're going to take 2/5 times both sides of the equation. What are we going to do with that -5? Put it over 1, make it into a fraction. So again, what changed is we introduced a 2/5 into each side. We're multiplying both sides by 2/5. Okay? So what happens over here?
You can cross out all
2's
those,
cancel,
and 5.
5's cancel, and we have n. Okay, what happens on the other side? The 5 cancels with that 5. Be careful though, does the negative sign cancel? No, don't cancel that. Only the 5 part of it can cancel. Can anything else be canceled? Okay, so now we say to ourselves, get a positive times a negative. A positive times a negative is a negative. 2 times, well this is like a 1 up here, isn't it? 2 times a 1 is 2, and 1 times a 1 is 1, so n equals -2. Okay, any questions about that one? Well, it just so happens that the next one has fractions on both sides. So don't get confused, when there's fractions on both sides, you still want to concentrate on the fraction that's on the side with the variable. So what can we do first to rename this again?
Take out that A.
The a can come out. So the only thing we're going to do here is we're going to rename that equation. We're going to take that -3a over 4, and we're going to rename it -3/4 a. Okay, what should we do now to solve it? What
The
should we do to both sides?
variable I'll give you 3/4.
Okay, I need to hear from somebody else in this room. I need to know that other people have a brain. Dakota, what do you want to do?
Can I provide them the time right on the board?
No, because we're running out of time. But thanks for offering. Can you just tell me what we're going to do?
So we're gonna take 3/4 and use the reciprocal
Okay.
as in 4/3, 4/3, -4/3.
Yeah, we're going to take -4/3 times both sides. Exactly. Good job.
Oh, we use both sides?
We're going to write that. And we're going to write that. That's our step of work. What? Right? No. It's a problem. Okay, and again, we're going to go to the side where the variable was. We're going to make sure we multiply by the right thing. How do we know if we multiplied by the right thing?
Because it's reciprocal.
Because everything better
bottom.
cancel away, the negatives cancel, the 4s cancel,
Force,
the 3s cancel, and we're left with
A.
A. Okay, is there any simplifying we can do over on that other side before we multiply?
Yeah, okay.
4
4 divided by
and 8, can't we do that?
yeah, it goes
4 goes into
times
both of them, so 4 into itself is 1, 4 into 8 is
2.
2. Anything else? Rose?
I have a question for the negative four. Since that's a negative, wouldn't it
What?
be like negative?
Okay, but see, we're gonna deal with the negatives when we do the multiplying. Remember, we're just gonna kind of ignore the negatives for right now. But do you want to cancel those negatives? Is that what you're thinking?
I thought like since you like do the simplifier thing, that would go.
Yeah, I understand. So you're saying if this is a negative 4 and this should this be a negative 1? It really is. I'm gonna let that negative sign go with that 1. Okay. Can we do any other simplifying?
No.
Okay, so now we multiply across. Negative times a negative, first is a
Positive.
positive, and 1 times 5 is
5.
5. 3 times 2 is
6.
6. Can that be simplified?
Yes. What? No. No, I don't think so.
Okay, then our solution is 5, 6. Okay, so we're going to have to put on the note, we do have more. Okay, don't stay with me. We do have more notes on the back side to do, but we're not going to do them up to date. So that